We freaking did it, boys. We freaking did it, and I couldn't have done it without you guys. We've got the world's first C60 transmission, mated to the world's first and most powerful boosted 3A92. Yes, baby. Now we're talking. We are going to be in for a wild ride. If you guys remember, this is 3/4 inch piece of 6061 steel, or 6061 aluminum. It's a 3/4 inch aluminum. What I'm able to do here is I have both the Toyota transmission bell housing, but then I also have the Mirage transmission bell housing. Okay, so the benefit with having both of these bell housings loose like this is I can put them right on, I can line them up, eyeball them, I can trace, I can find all my bolt holes and all of that good stuff. However, this still runs into the problem of I need these to be precision centered. Both sides, both cases have to be precision centered. Now, one thing I did notice is that my input shaft, this is out of the Toyota transmission, the input shaft from the Toyota does drop all the way down and it actually centers itself fairly well in there. So that gives me kind of the added benefit of being able to mark this thing by way of using the input shaft out of the Toyota. You can see where it's actually making contact with the metal there. But I've also punched the center of this that I want to use. So what I'm going to do, and again, this method varies for every different application, but one way that I can do this, I believe, and get this perfectly centered, is by drilling a hole exactly the size of the input shaft on the Toyota spline side. So this spline is right at 23 mil. So if I put a 23 millimeter hole dead center of this, I can at least line up that one. Okay, so I'm making some progress here on our adapter plate, and I'm going to share just a couple of quick thoughts about this process. This will apply to you that are doing general adapter plates. Some of this information will apply. And then certainly if you happen to be doing this exact transmission swap, meaning a C60 Toyota transmission with the Mitsubishi Mirage engine, then this will completely apply to you and probably how you're going to want to do this. However, the same techniques can be applied to other transmission adapter plates, but this is incredibly tricky because we've got two transmission bolt patterns, or rather an engine bolt pattern and a new transmission bolt pattern that are so similar in size and shape and even individual bolt location that we've got a lot of overlap, meaning if this is the transmission side and this is the engine side, both transmissions in some locations have bolts that come in from both sides. Now, that's not going to work for this type of adapter because obviously we can't thread bolts in from either side. We have to choose a side, meaning we can either put the adapter plate on the engine first and then we have to bolt the transmission to just the adapter plate, or we can do it the other way around. We can bolt the transmission adapter plate to the transmission and then run the bolts into the engine side. Normally, if you have one that's larger than the other, that becomes a lot easier problem to solve because then there's a spacing with those bolt holes. transmission side, engine side, or engine side, transmission side. In our case, those bolt holes are lining up. And obviously we can't run a through bolt through the transmission, through the adapter plate, and then through the engine because they both thread from different directions. Now, this line here that goes across the bottom, this is just for the starter. Okay, so on our engine here, that's the line. So the starter, this plate is here. There's no structural support to that plate. So the way I want you guys to think about this is kind of just like a half, you know, a U-shape, horseshoe type situation here, where all of our stresses and forces are going to begin at this bolt hole here. So we've got bolts here, bolts over here, we've got some bolts over there, and our last supporting bolt is right here, which really, if you were to draw a line from this side to that other side, you're only supporting the transmission from a half circle. Now we are going to have our starter still down here on the bottom side of the engine, so this is very important that we do that correctly. However, in terms of strength and stability and structural strength, we're only working with half. This top half is what holds that transmission on. So what we're going to do is we're going to mount the adapter plate to the engine first. We're going to secure that, and then the transmission will then bolt to the adapter plate. Again, we can't put in two sets of bolts. Even if those holes were off center, we can't put one bolt hole in this way from the middle out, just like we can't put one in from the middle out that way, because once it's all sandwiched together, you can't put a bolt in the middle of that sandwich. I hope that makes sense. I don't know how else to explain it. So with that in mind, we do have a lot of overlap going on in the front here. So these aluminum markings here, these are just going to be simple drilled bolt holes that are going to accommodate 8mm bolts, which is what the factory Mirage transmission uses, 8mm by 1.25 thread. Okay, so the adapter plate will get bolted to the engine here, it will get bolted to the engine here, and it will get bolted to the engine here. So those are just 3 8mm bolt holes that are going to go through here, and through here. Now, there's not going to be any inserts used because these are just going to be through bolts. But one thing I am going to have to do is I'm going to have to countersink all 3 of those because the new transmission sits outside, or actually right on top of those 3 bolt holes. So again, once this bolts to the engine, we then have to bolt the transmission right on top of those 3 bolts. The other bolts that are going to hold the transmission on is this one here. Now this one is going to take an 8 by 125mm stainless insert, or not stainless, but just a steel insert that I'm going to put in here. And what that is that's a bolt that threads from the back side of the engine and actually threads into the transmission side. Now in this case, because there is no Mirage transmission on the other side, the Mirage transmission bolt holes are actually going to be the adapter bolt holes. So that will have a threaded 8mm insert. So now we've got 3 bolts going through the top. We've got 1 bolt coming in through the back here into that insert. This one down here is also going to do the same thing with regard to an 8 by 125mm insert here, so we'll have another steel insert there. That will be a bolt that holds the plate to the engine that comes through the backside. Now fortunately, I got a little bit lucky here. The old transmission comes out further on this one section here than the new transmission. Let me get you guys in a little closer there. Now this one's going to be exposed, so you will actually see the threads coming through back here because the let's see, the C60 transmission is actually going to be set inside of this. Now this one, I'm going to use a 10mm because the hole that's in the engine block is large enough to accommodate a 10mm thread. Now this is going to be a 10 by 125mm. This is the only bolt hole that's actually over the size of the standard 8mm that the Mirage transmission takes. So why am I using a 10mm? Well, just additional strength in and around this area, which I'll show you here in a minute why I'm trying to get more torque and more strength into this part of the adapter plate. So that is how the adapter plate mounts to the engine. 10mm, 8mm, 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 all countersunk up here. Then it'll be a threaded 8mm insert, threaded 8mm insert down here. Let's assume that is bolted to the engine. I will show you how the transmission is going to mount to that one. Okay, so now these top two, these are the C60 standard transmission bolts. This is what Toyota uses to mount their C60 transmission to their Toyota engine. I'm going to use a 10mm insert here into the adapter plate. So once the transmission is on the adapter plate, I can then run my through bolts from the transmission side into the adapter plate. There's going to be another one up here in this corner. We're not using that one, I just put it there to see what might be the best location. So that's the one I'm using only because I was able to get this lined up so there's no interference fit between this 8mm through bolt and that 10mm insert. So with the transmission on top, we've got our 2 bolt holes up here at the top. We've got the starter holes here and here. Now this starter hole right there, you can see is threaded. I'm going to drill out the threads that are in this, and I am going to pass a bolt through here to hold that transmission into place. So that's going to be a 10 by 125 insert. Okay, so we got our starter hole here, starter hole there, nothing having to do with structural support here, it's just for the starter. We do have the transmission being bolted to the adapter plate here to keep that transmission flush.
The next day.
We're back, guys, working on the adapter plate. I made a few minor mistakes with alignment when I was trying to eyeball and use paint markings from the bell housings. So that's not going to work. It would have worked out fine to mark the outer holes that I had access to, but once I got over here into this corner, these holes were not lining up because those are the ones I was using paint to mark, and they were best kind of guesses at best. So I've changed my method. I've got 2 big pieces of construction paper, and what I did is I overlaid the pieces on top of each bell housing, and I just used a hammer here to mark out. So now we're using actual templates. Guys, just use the actual templates. It's so much easier. I don't know why I didn't do that to begin with, but it is what it is. And actually, I've already drilled these out. I drilled these out last night. Now, these are all just kind of pilot holes just to make sure that they lined up. So I drilled these all out to 8mm. These are going to take, well, some of them are going to be through holes and others are going to be the inserts. I was able to kind of imprint the center line of the clutch. Found the center of the circle, poked a tiny hole. Did the same thing here, and the way that I did that is I got a 1-inch diameter dowel, put a little black paint on it, I dropped it through the bell housing, which was nice and snug, and then just marked the center of those holes. So we're gonna line these up with my little file here, and then it's just a matter of making sure that these are approximately where I wanted these to be, where they were last time. So far easier if you just template it, guys. There's no way you're going to get those precision markings and precision clutch alignment and shaft alignment unless you're using a template.
A few moments later.
All holes that I'm using for both transmission, adapter plate, and the transmission and the engine side are now drilled. Now I can't lay this flush on the engine because the crankshaft, of course, is sticking out. And so until I take more material out of the center here, I really can't line up all of the bolt holes. This was first try, you know, caveman tools in my garage. First try, knocked it out of the park. All 3 of these bolt holes, these were unmeasured. These were just, I took my center punch, I used the template, I marked with the template, I took a center punch and just basically guessed the center of these holes. And so far, my guesses have been precision because there is no stress, there's no kinking of the threads, there's no nothing going on with these. These are all perfectly in alignment. Wonderful, I'm so happy. Okay, so I'm at the stage where I need to start tapping some of these holes for our inserts. Now, I'm gonna let you guys know, every time I've tried to tap any type of metal, any type of bit size, any type of material, any type of cutting oil, it doesn't matter. I break the taps every single time and or break the tools every single time. This is a brand new tap. It was a special order tap. This is an M12 by 175. So nothing crazy, nothing special. It's a 12mm tap. I just spent 20 bucks on this supposedly heavy-duty tap handle because no tap handle I ever have works. I used a brand new drill bit, and this is a brand new tap. And this is aluminum. Aluminum should not be this hard. What if this was steel and I was trying to tap it? This would be ridiculous. So let me just show you an example of this. So I'm having to use so much force, it's impossible to use these handles. I'm having to use this much leverage just to get this thing to budge, the tap. And of course, if I keep doing that, I'm going to break this tap. This was drilled perfectly, and I even started to tap this on the drill press, so I know that this hole is centered. Now I am using 3-in-1 oil. I'll admit I'm not using a real cutting oil, but there shouldn't be that big of a difference between a 3-in-1 oil and just a standard cutting oil. Because you can see that's gonna break. I'm blowing off with an air compressor all of the shavings out of there. I'm cleaning the tap itself. Again, this is brand new. This is the first hole it's ever been used for. I don't understand what the heck I'm doing wrong. Okay guys, we're back and it's a few days later. Now I was having a bear of a time trying to get this tap to thread into the aluminum here. And again, I don't know what it is exactly that I'm doing wrong, except the only thing I can think is that the taps I've been buying, which are just like Lowe's and Home Depot taps, that kind of thing, or like cheap taps on Amazon, that there's got to be something wrong with these taps because I'm just not able to get these threads at all. So I've got two new things. These just came in today. These are these little tap sockets. I just keep breaking these tap handles every single time I use them. This guy was like another 18 bucks and I broke it the very first time I used it, so that's complete waste. Now I do have another tap. This is another 12 by 1.75. 12 by 1.75. So I don't know, this one did come from Amazon, but it was a bit more expensive. I think this guy was like 18 bucks for a single tap. And I just kind of hoped with that maybe buying the most expensive tap with the highest ratings on Amazon would be decent enough. It's certainly not a name brand, it's probably coming from China. But now that I've got a fresh tap and I've got these sockets, we're gonna try this again and see if I can make better progress this time. Now, I was also talking to Ratherby Welding a little bit because he's probably got some more experience with tapping than I do. And he actually recommended that maybe I switch to WD-40 for tapping aluminum. He seems to think that that's like even more effective than 3-in-1 or some other cutting fluid. So I'll just go ahead and douse this guy with a healthy amount of WD-40. And hopefully we have a little bit more success now. It's pouring rain here in Florida. Let's go ahead and see if maybe this time hold up. This is easy. What? Wait a minute, am I tapping this thing right now? I'm not even having to reverse this thing. I don't know what's going on here, guys. I feel like I'm tapping this thread right now. Oh wait, but it just bottomed out. Hang on a sec. There's no way that that's that easy. I had a wrench. Well, you saw. The lever that I was using for the other tap was this, so that's how long that is compared to this wrench. Tell me it wasn't that easy. If I just put new threads in this thing, I'm going to be blown away. That's definitely some aluminum coming out of there. What? Hold up. Hold up. Wait a minute. Hold on a minute here. What the freak, man? You guys saw you just saw how easy that was, right? What? Yo, these taps are trash. Pretty sure this one came from either Lowe's or Amazon, but it is brand new. I've never used it a single time. Not for steel, not for aluminum, not for anything. Did you just see how easy that was? So I'm going to chuck the new drill bit, or the new tap, in the drill bit, or in the drill chuck rather. Yeah, and then we'll, I guess we'll start tapping finally. Holy cow. All right, stand by. Well, there she is, boys. Finished. Sort of finished. Mostly finished. All the hard stuff's done. Decided just to cut this out with the jigsaw, so took me a very, very long time to cut this thing with the jigsaw. Gosh, it was slow and painful, but we got it done. And of course, now is the big moment. I haven't fitted this thing yet to see if it adapts to the engine and to the transmission. This thing's still covered in oil and grease and shavings and stuff, so I'm gonna give this thing a quick wash and then we'll bring it over to the engine. We'll see if I actually set these holes in as I intended to or if I messed it up. Let's go. All right, those are our locating dowel pins. They are in, so that's a good sign. Let me, oh, that's supposed to have a thread insert. Let me get one in there. I don't have the right hardware for this right now, so I'm just demonstrating with these regular bolt head flanged 8mm. Haha! That one's threading in. That's the one I was concerned about. Yeah, buddy. Sweet. I guess I shouldn't be that impressed with my own work, but you know, it's one thing to like have a plan and to do it. It's another thing for it to actually work. All right. This sucker's solid. In total, what's holding the plate to the engine is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are going to hold the adapter plate to the engine. Now, we just need to make sure that our belt housing is going to fit.
Get to the chopper, it doesn't fit.
Okay, so the reason this isn't fitting is because of these anti-counter sunkers. So we don't need to worry about the countersunk ones right now. Line up our dowel pins. Ooh. Oh. Shit. Thought I was gonna have another toe injury. Crap. It's not gonna thread far enough through to hold it in place. You need to quickly get these guys threaded in. We freaking did it, boys. We freaking did it, and I couldn't have done it without you guys. Okay, so here's where we're at with the project. We got Durham Town in like 2 weeks. Really trying to get this thing back together to make that trip. But I gotta get cranking. There's a bit more fit and finish that I need to do. Just wanna clean up the adapter plate. It's got some really sharp edges that I've been cutting my fingers on. So we'll take a grinder to it, we'll trim, you know, we'll smooth over those corners and edges. And then the only thing I haven't tested or fit is the starter yet. Now, those starter holes were punched exactly the way that the previous setup was done. The alignment, I can't get it on camera, but when I have the bell housing on and I look down to the center of that crankshaft hub, well, the alignment's perfect, okay? We'll leave it at that. Alignment's beautiful. Seems like I cut enough material out here for our flywheel. Yeah, there's no close contact for anything there. You know, we've got, that's probably the least amount of space between this, this flywheel and everything else. Now, I guess I want to whack this with a 12-volt battery on the starter to see what our engine does. So, let's just freaking do it. All right, let's test this baby. Let's see if the starter's working. We got our anti-gravity battery. This is the one I was running previously. By the way, guys, if you're looking for lightweight batteries for any of your custom projects or your motorcycles or anything, these anti-gravity batteries are my absolute favorite. I've tried a lot of different batteries in the industry, but these guys just have, in my opinion, some of the best build quality and some of the best feature sets of any batteries. And also, guys, the pricing on these anti-gravity batteries, really very good. So if you're in the market for a lightweight lithium battery, guys, check out anti-gravity batteries. Phenomenal product. All right, so I got my lead on both our 12-volt start solenoid as well as the main power. Fingers crossed, here we go. Hook up our negative. And interesting. Hey, any result's a good result, right? What the heck, man? Chino, turn over. All right. Let's try a slightly more powerful battery. It looks like our starter's lining up, though. Now that battery's probably just out of juice. So, we get our brand new, got something special. I don't know if I showed you guys this, but we got a brand new anti-gravity. This one is just a higher cold cranking amp. All right, so this is our new guy. This is our new ATX20 HD. Now, according to this little meter here, we've got a good charge on this thing, so. Okay, I'm gonna go with, yeah, it works. Now, these cables, as you can see, are barely holding on for dear life. So I don't blame the starter, the engine. There's nothing weird going on here. These cables just cannot transfer the amount of amperage needed. I'm gonna mop this thing up first so that way I can set it down in the buggy and just make sure that this is actually gonna fit. We're gonna have to obviously build some new axles, some new mounts for this thing. There's a lot of work to do, so let's get going.